Let's talk about Social Security. For millions of people, it's an absolute lifeline. But for just as many, it's a huge source of debate. And there's one accusation you hear more than any other. So in this explainer, we're going to cut through the noise, unpack how the system really works, and tackle that explosive claim head-on. Let's get right into it. And yeah, we're starting right there, at the heart of the whole controversy. Is this system that so many Americans rely on just a massive government-run fraud? It's a really provocative question, I know, but answering it is actually the key to understanding what Social Security is all about.
So, first up, the accusation. To get to an answer, we have to really understand the argument itself. So let's break down exactly why some people look at Social Security and say, hey, that looks just like a Ponzi scheme.
Okay, the entire argument really hinges on this one single concept. Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system. Now, what does that mean? It means the money you pay in from your paycheck today, it isn't getting put into a little account with your name on it. It's not being saved up for you. Instead, it's going right back out the door to pay the people who are retired right now.
And this, right here, is where the comparison comes from. You know how a classic Ponzi scheme works, right? It needs a constant flow of new money from new investors to pay off the early investors. Well, critics argue that Social Security does the exact same thing, just with different labels. The new investors are current workers, and the old ones are today's retirees. And to see why this argument is so powerful, just look at this real-world example. This is Ida Mae Fuller. She was the very first American to get a regular Social Security retirement check, and the total amount she ever paid into the system was just $24.75. Go ahead and remember that number.
Because over her lifetime, she collected nearly $23,000 in benefits. I mean, that is an absolutely astronomical return. It's the kind of payout that gets the very first investors in a pyramid scheme so excited. And it was only possible because a brand new, much larger generation of workers was suddenly paying into the system right after her.
And this really gets to the core of the challenge the system faces today. You see, back in 1950, you had over 16 workers paying in for every single retiree. But today, that number has totally cratered. It's down to less than 3. And when your whole system depends on new money coming in, a shrinking base of contributors is, a very serious problem. But here's the crucial counterargument. Supporters of the system say comparing it to a secret fraud completely misses the point. Social Security isn't a secret. It's a totally transparent, legally required social insurance program. And unlike some scam artist, the government has the power to raise taxes or borrow money to make good on its promises. It's not a secret. It's literally the law. And this brings us to our next part, because this isn't just an economic debate, it's a legal one. The system has been challenged in court, and what the Supreme Court has ruled is absolutely crucial for understanding what Social Security really is.
The first big test came way back in 1937. The Supreme Court gave the whole system a thumbs up, saying it was constitutional. But, and this is a really big but, they didn't define it as a personal pension plan. They said it was a form of taxation and spending designed for the general welfare of the country. Their reasoning was that poverty among the elderly was a national crisis, and only the federal government could fix it.
Now, this next part is a real shocker for a lot of people. That money that's taken out of your paycheck, is it legally your property? The Supreme Court answered that question in 1960 with a very clear no. You do not have an accrued property right to Social Security benefits. In plain English, that means Congress can legally change the rules, the benefit amounts, the retirement age, anytime it wants. It's not a contract.
Okay, so if it's not our property and it's not sitting in a personal savings account, where in the world does all that money actually go? Well, this brings us to the famous and famously misunderstood Social Security Trust Fund.
All right, let's trace the journey of your tax dollars. For many years, Social Security collected way more in taxes than it paid out in benefits. So what happens to that surplus cash? Step 2, by law, it has to be used to buy special government bonds. Then, step 3, the actual cash gets moved into the U.S. Treasury's main checking account and spent on everything else, highways, defense, you name it. So what's left in the trust fund? A filing cabinet full of government IOUs. That's step 4.
And as you might imagine, this whole setup gets a lot of criticism. For one, for decades, all those surpluses made the annual federal deficit look smaller than it really was. But the other big criticism is that the interest on those government bonds is tiny compared to what could have been earned if that money was invested in the private markets. It represents a massive opportunity cost.
So we've looked at the Ponzi accusation, we've looked at the legal reality, and we've followed the money. Let's pull all these threads together and figure out the verdict. What is this system really? When you put them side by side like this, the differences really pop. A Ponzi scheme is a criminal fraud. It's deceptive, and it's designed to collapse. Social Security is a public, government mandate, and it's sustained by the legal power to tax and borrow. So even though they both use new money to pay earlier participants, their legal status, their transparency, and how they're sustained are just worlds apart.
So here's the final takeaway. Social Security is not a criminal Ponzi scheme, but it's also not a personal retirement account. It's a totally unique kind of social insurance program. It's built on a legal promise from one generation to the next, and it's a promise that is facing some very, very real demographic and financial challenges.
Which really leaves us with one final question for you to think about. We know it's not a scam, but we also know it's not your property. It's a promise, sure, but it's a promise that can be changed by law at any time. So knowing all that, how secure does that promise feel to you?